Hey everyone, and welcome to the deep dive. We're going to be tackling something huge today.
Yeah,
Global power dynamics.
it's a big one.
Yeah, it is. So to help us understand how empires rise and fall, we've got some excerpts from Ray Dalio's The Changing World Order.
Great book.
It is a fascinating book.
Yeah.
And
It's kind of mind-blowing.
yeah, honestly, it's a little bit mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But the goal here isn't to just rehash history, though.
Right.
It's to help you see the forces shaping the world today, like the big things that go way beyond the daily headlines.
Yeah, I think what's amazing about Dalio is that he connects these massive historical patterns to things that are happening right now.
Oh, wow.
It's like he's giving us a sneak peek at the script of history and even hinting at what might be coming next.
All right, so no pressure, but you're saying this could be like our crystal ball for the future.
Kind of.
I'm intrigued. Let's unpack this.
Okay.
Dalio keeps talking about this big cycle thing.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So imagine a human life. You're born, you grow, you hit your peak, and eventually things start to slow down.
Yeah.
Dalio says empires follow this same pattern.
Oh, interesting.
They rise up,
Okay.
they dominate for a while,
Uh-huh.
and then they decline, often in ways that are surprisingly predictable.
Wait, so even massive empires like the Romans or the British Empire,
Yes.
they had like a built-in expiration date?
It's like they had a biological clock ticking away.
That's wild.
Exactly.
Why?
And what's even crazier is that Dalio thinks, based on these historical patterns, we might be in a huge transition period right now.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. So how does he explain all this?
Yeah.
How do empires actually rise and fall?
Well, he lays out 18 key factors, these determinants that push empires in one direction or another.
Okay.
Some are obvious, like military strength or geography,
Yeah.
but others are more surprising, like how innovative a society is or their ability to learn from past mistakes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I need specifics. Give me an example of how these determinants actually work.
Okay, let's take geography.
Okay.
Dalio points out that the sheer size and natural resources of the U.S. and China shaped their destinies very differently than, say, Europe, which is much more fragmented.
Right.
That vastness allowed for more internal unity and self-sufficiency.
I see. So a country's literal landscape can shape its path.
It can.
That's fascinating.
Yeah,
What about something like human capital?
sure.
I get that it's important, but what does Dalio even mean by that?
He calls it self-sufficient plus.
Right.
It's not just about having skilled workers. It's about a whole culture that values education,
Mm-hmm.
hard work, and being able to produce more than you consume.
Okay.
Think about it like this. In the 19th century, America had a massive frontier to settle.
Right.
So there was a huge need and cultural push to be self-sufficient, but also to produce enough to feed those growing cities back east.
So it's almost like each citizen adds to the equation. It's not just about leaders or policy.
Exactly. It's the collective skills and work ethic of everyone in a nation that fuels its rise.
All right, that's human capital.
Uh-huh.
But let's be real, money talks. Where do debt and capital markets fit into all of this?
That's where things get tricky.
Okay.
Dalio explains that they're a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
Used wisely, debt can fuel growth and awesome new inventions.
Right.
But too much debt, especially when everyone's just speculating, can lead to a nation overextending itself and eventually crashing.
Oh.
It's like a person who gets addicted to credit cards.
Yeah.
Seems fun at first, but those bills eventually come due.
Oh, that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
So empires, like people, can get a little too spend-happy and end up in a financial mess?
Yeah.
Is that what took down some of those famous empires?
You got it.
Wow.
And when that happens, history shows, it often leads to internal fighting,
Uh-huh.
challenges from other countries,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes even war.
Okay, this is getting intense.
Yeah.
Dalio mentions these 3 big cycles that are especially important. Can you break those down for me?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The first is the long-term debt cycle, which we just touched on.
Right.
It's basically the cycle of borrowing, spending, and eventually having to pay back all that borrowed money,
Right.
usually with interest.
Right. You said it's like a person's financial life.
Yeah.
Can you flesh that out a bit more?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
When you're young, you might take out loans for school
Yeah.
or to buy your first place.
Uh-huh.
That debt can help you build wealth over time.
Right.
But if you keep borrowing without increasing your income, eventually you'll be drowning in debt.
Yeah, of course.
Nations go through similar phases.
Okay.
They take on debt to build infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
or fund wars.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, that analogy really helps. What's the next big cycle?
That would be the internal order disorder cycle.
Oh,
Think of this as the internal stability of a nation.
Okay.
It's like the mood of a whole society.
Interesting.
When people are united and working towards shared goals.
You get prosperity and growth.
Right.
But when there's a lack of trust,
Mm-hmm.
widening inequality,
Yeah.
and lots of social and political division, that's when you see conflict, maybe even revolutions.
Wow. So a country's internal vibe can literally make or break it?
It can.
What about that last cycle Dalio talks about?
That's the external order disorder cycle.
Okay.
This one's about how nations interact with each other. Think
Yes.
rivalries, alliances,
Yeah.
and of course, wars.
Of course.
When a new power emerges that threatens the current world order, things can get messy fast.
Hold on. So you're telling me that these cycles are playing out right now?
They are.
Like with the U.S. and China?
Yes,
This is starting to feel a little too real.
it is.
All right. Well, to really grasp these cycles,
Yeah.
we need to look at some specific examples.
We do.
So let's dive into some historical parallels that Dalio highlights.
Okay.
These are stories of empires that show these cycles in action.
Right.
Ooh, history coming to life.
Let's do it.
I'm ready. Okay.
All right, so let's rewind the clock back to the 17th century and check out the Dutch Empire.
Okay.
What's fascinating about them is that they basically invented modern capitalism.
Oh, wow.
They were masters of trade,
Well.
set up the first stock exchange, and created all these fancy financial tools
Uh-huh.
way ahead of their time.
It's crazy how such a small country became such an economic powerhouse.
It is.
What was their secret sauce?
Well, they were incredibly innovative and had a knack for making money.
Okay.
They understood the power of global trade and built a vast network of connections across the world.
Right?
For a while, they were the undisputed kings of commerce.
But like you said, even empires have an expiration date.
They do.
What went wrong for the Dutch?
Their success also sowed the seeds of their decline.
Oh, how so?
They got involved in a bunch of wars, including several with England, which drained their resources and weakened their global standing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Remember that external order disorder cycle we talked
Yeah.
about? That's a prime example of it in action. They couldn't maintain their dominance in a changing world.
So even financial genius couldn't save them from making some classic empire mistakes.
It seems that way.
It's a good reminder that money isn't everything.
Right.
What about the British Empire? How did they manage to rise to power?
Well, the British learned a lot from the Dutch.
Okay.
They focused on building a powerful navy, dominating trade routes, and fostering technological innovation.
Uh-huh.
They were masters of adaptation and strategy. At their peak, the sun literally never set on the British Empire.
Wow.
Their territories were so vast.
Talk about a global footprint,
Yeah.
but they couldn't hold on to that forever, right?
Right.
What caused their downfall?
Well, like all empires, they eventually faced internal and external pressures.
Okay.
They had a growing debt burden from all their imperial adventures,
Right.
increasing social and political divisions back home.
Mm.
And they were facing competition from rising powers like Germany and eventually the United States.
So those three big cycles caught up with them too.
They did.
The debt cycle, the internal disorder cycle, and that external competition.
Yep.
It's all connected.
It is.
And the two world wars really marked a turning point for the British Empire.
Yeah.
They couldn't maintain their global dominance in the face of those massive upheavals and the changing world order that followed.
Right.
Okay, so this is all starting to feel a bit eerie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like empires are playing out the same tragic story over and over again.
Kinda, yeah.
Which brings us to the million-dollar question. Where does the U.S. fit into all of this?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Dalio suggests that the U.S., which became the top dog after World War II, is now facing many of the same challenges that plagued past empires at their peak.
Oh, wow.
He points to things like skyrocketing debt levels,
Okay.
fueled by overspending and those fancy financial tools we talked about earlier,
Right.
plus a widening gap between the rich and poor and increasing political polarization.
You're not painting a very rosy picture here.
Oh, I'm not.
Are you saying the U.S. is headed for a fall?
Well, Dalio doesn't say it outright, but he definitely sees some red flags based on historical patterns.
Okay.
He doesn't think it's inevitable, but he's urging us to pay attention to these warning signs and learn from the mistakes of those who came before us.
Okay, that's definitely food for thought.
Yeah,
And of course, we can't forget about China.
right.
How does their rise factor into all of this?
That's the big wild card, isn't it? Dalio spends a good chunk of his book analyzing the U.S.-China rivalry.
Okay.
He acknowledges that China's rise has been largely peaceful and driven by economic growth so far, but he also sees potential for conflict as their interests and influence increasingly clash with those of the U.S.
Right.
It's like watching a slow-motion collision between two massive forces.
Yeah, and you mentioned those 5 types of war that Dalio talks about.
Yeah.
That's not exactly comforting.
It's not.
So those wars aren't just theoretical, they're playing out in real time.
They are.
What are some other examples?
Well, the technology war is a big one. Both the U.S. and China are pouring massive resources into dominating areas like artificial intelligence, 5G, and quantum computing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a modern-day space race with incredibly high stakes for the future.
It feels like whoever wins that race could control the future.
It could.
What about those other types of war that Dalio mentions?
Well, there's the capital war, which is all about competition for investment,
Okay.
control of key resources like rare earth minerals,
Mm-hmm.
and which country's currency reigns supreme in global markets.
Right.
China is making moves to challenge the dominance of the U.S. dollar, which could have huge implications for the global financial system.
It's a reminder that economic power and global influence go hand in hand.
They do.
And what about the geopolitical war? That one sounds particularly scary.
Yeah, that's where things get really tense.
Okay.
The U.S. and China are vying for influence and strategic partnerships all over the world,
Right.
often backing different sides in regional conflicts.
I see.
Places like the South China Sea, Taiwan, and the Indo-Pacific region are potential flashpoints where those tensions could boil over.
It's like they're playing a global game of Risk, but with real armies and real consequences.
Yeah, it is.
So is Dalio predicting all-out war between the U.S. and China?
He doesn't go that far,
Okay.
but he definitely highlights the risks.
Uh-huh.
He says that miscalculations, nationalistic fervor, and domestic political pressures could push things in a dangerous direction.
Right.
He even points out that historically, these other types of war often pave the way for actual military conflict.
Okay.
It's like a slippery slope where things can escalate quickly if we're not careful.
Okay. I think I need to take a deep breath after all that.
Yeah.
But before we get too lost in the doom and gloom,
Yeah.
let's talk about something a bit more hopeful.
Okay.
Dalio doesn't just focus on the negative, right?
No, he doesn't.
He also explores those ideas of evolution and paradigm shifts.
Yes, that's what I find so insightful about his work. He acknowledges the cycles of history, the rise and fall of empires, and the potential for conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But he also sees an underlying trend of human progress.
Oh, that's nice.
He believes that we're constantly evolving, learning from our mistakes, and developing new technologies that can improve our lives.
So even amidst the chaos and uncertainty, there's reason for optimism.
I think so.
What are some examples of this evolution in action?
He points to the incredible advancements in technology, especially in areas like artificial intelligence and biotechnology.
Okay.
He believes that these advancements have the potential to solve some of our biggest challenges and create a more sustainable and prosperous future for everyone.
Wow.
He sees AI, in particular, as a tool that can amplify human intelligence and lead to breakthroughs in healthcare, energy, and even how we govern ourselves.
Interesting.
Of course, he also acknowledges the potential risks of AI,
Right.
but he's ultimately hopeful about its long-term impact.
Yeah. Wow. So even with all the challenges we're facing, there's a possibility that we're on the verge of a positive transformation.
I think so.
That's really encouraging.
It is.
But I'm also curious, how does all of this relate to the listener,
Yeah,
to everyday people like you and me?
right.
Does Dalio offer any practical advice for navigating these complex forces in our own lives?
He does.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of being adaptable,
Mm-hmm.
open-minded, and willing to challenge our assumptions.
Okay.
He encourages people to diversify their skills, their investments,
Right.
and even their social and political networks.
Wow.
It's like building a portfolio for your life,
Okay.
having a mix of experiences and perspectives that can help you weather any storm.
Yeah.
He also stresses the importance of having a plan B in case things don't go as expected.
So it's not just about understanding history.
Right.
It's about applying those lessons to our own lives and making choices that prepare us for whatever the future holds.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
That's really insightful.
It is.
So it's about being proactive, not reactive.
Right.
Embracing change and positioning ourselves to not just survive,
Yeah,
but to thrive in the world that's taking shape around us.
exactly.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From the rise and fall of empires,
Yeah.
to the dynamics of the U.S.-China rivalry, to the potential for technological advancements to reshape our world.
Right?
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder.
Right.
If history is a guide,
Mm-hmm.
What choices can we make today to create a better,
Yeah.
more equitable future for ourselves and for generations to come?
That's a big one.
It's a big question,
It is.
but one worth thinking about.
Yeah, that is a really powerful question to think about.
It is.
And it leads us right into what I think is the most exciting, but also maybe the most nerve-wracking part of all this.
Yeah,
The future.
of course.
We've talked about all these patterns, these cycles, these rivalries.
But where does it all lead?
Right.
What's Dalio's take on what's coming next?
You're right. It is both exciting and a little scary to think about.
Yeah.
Dalio doesn't claim to have a crystal ball,
Right.
but based on his analysis of history, he does point to some possibilities,
Okay.
some big shifts that could be on the horizon.
Okay. Lay it on me.
Right.
What's the Dalio download on the future?
Well, first, he thinks we're in a period of heightened risk,
Mm-hmm.
where all these cycles we've been discussing are kind of crashing together.
Oh.
He compares it to the 1930s,
Uh-huh.
a decade that saw the Great Depression, the rise of dangerous ideologies, and ultimately World War II.
Whoa. Okay, that's a pretty intense comparison.
It is.
But he's not saying another world war is inevitable, right?
He doesn't think it's a sure thing, but he says the risk is real.
Right.
Remember all those tensions between the U.S. and China?
Yeah, of course.
Dalio says things could escalate quickly,
Okay.
especially if there are miscalculations or if those nationalistic feelings we talked about start to boil over. He even suggests that the next decade could be a turning point where the global order gets completely reshaped.
Okay, I need a moment to process all this.
Yeah,
A decade of potential upheaval.
it's a lot.
That's huge. But what would this new world order even look like? Does he give any hints?
He thinks we're moving towards a world where power isn't concentrated in just one country,
Okay.
like the U.S. has been for the past several decades.
Right.
He sees power becoming more spread out,
Yeah.
with China, India, and maybe even regional groups like the European Union playing bigger roles.
Interesting.
And he also sees technology continuing to disrupt everything,
Yeah.
with AI and biotechnology changing not just our economy, but how we live, work, and even define what it means to be human.
So a world that's more multipolar, more technologically advanced, and more uncertain than ever before.
Yeah?
It's a lot to wrap my head around. But how are we supposed to navigate all of this? Does Dalio offer any guidance for individuals, businesses, or even whole countries?
He does. He stresses that adaptability, resilience, and being willing to question everything are key.
Okay.
He encourages individuals to become multi-talented, diversify their investments, and build relationships with people from diverse backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a toolkit for the future.
Okay.
The more skills and perspectives you have, the better equipped you'll be to adapt to whatever comes your way.
So it's like having a plan B for your life.
Right.
But on a much bigger scale.
Yeah.
What about businesses? How can they prepare for these big shifts?
He says businesses need to be super agile and innovative, always adapting to new technologies and ways of doing things.
Right.
Think about how companies like Blockbuster failed to adapt to the rise of streaming.
Yeah.
Those who can't keep up will get left behind.
Survival of the fittest, but in the business world. And what about countries? What's their role in all of this?
Dalio says countries need to double down on education, innovation, and making sure their economies are competitive.
Okay.
If they don't, they risk falling behind in this new global landscape. It's like a race to the top. Those who invest in their people and embrace change will have the best chance of thriving.
So it's about being proactive, not reactive.
Exactly.
About shaping the future, not just reacting to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the patterns of history, understanding the forces at play, and making conscious choices that lead to a better future for everyone, not just a select few.
That's an inspiring way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.
Yeah,
About creating a future that we can all be proud of.
And that brings us to the heart of Dalio's message.
Okay.
He wants us to be aware of the risks, but also to see the opportunities that come with change.
Mm-hmm.
He believes that if we learn from the past, embrace innovation, and work together, we can shape a future that's more peaceful, prosperous, and equitable for everyone.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a mix of emotions right now.
Yeah.
A little overwhelmed by the scale of the challenges,
Uh-huh.
but also hopeful about the possibility of creating a better future. It's like Dalio's given us a roadmap, but it's up to us to choose the path we want to take.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
He's provided us with a framework for understanding the world, but the choices ultimately are ours to make.
And that, I think, is a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into Ray Dalio's The Changing World Order.
Great book.
It's a fascinating book. We've covered a lot of ground today, from historical cycles to geopolitical rivalries to the transformative potential of technology. We've explored how empires rise and fall, the drivers of wealth and power, and the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. We've delved into the complexities of the US-China relationship, the risks of conflict, and the potential for a new multipolar world order to emerge. And most importantly, we've considered what all of this means for us as individuals and as a global community. I hope you found this deep dive as fascinating and thought-provoking as we have.
We encourage you to explore Dalio's work further, to dig deeper into those historical examples that really caught your attention, and to start conversations with friends, family, and colleagues about the forces shaping our world. Because the more we understand these patterns, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges and seize the opportunities that lie ahead.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring.